What's it like to run into a burning building? What's it like to run towards them instead of away from them?
It took some getting used to in the beginning, that's for sure.
I'd
You
imagine.
know what? You know what is it's crazy is the other day we had that exact same scenario where I work in a fire station that's kind of have you ever seen well, I probably anyways. I work in a fire station where there's an engine and another brush patrol, and we work out kind of in the middle of nowhere, and there's not a lot out there. So, for example, if you're driving from Orange County to Vegas, it's not a place you want to get hurt because
Mm.
if there's not a lot of buildings around, there's
Yeah.
not a lot of fire stations. And so I work in one of those fire stations right now. My assignment is out there where there's not a lot of people. So when you have an assignment like that and you get calls like structure fires or vehicle accidents or rescues or full arrest, anything really, anytime anyone's having a bad day and doesn't know what to do, then we show up. And out there, you're on your own for quite some time. And so we try not to run directly into the building in the very beginning. We try and save a little gas in the tank because help's not coming for like another half hour or so. But I can tell you what, the first couple of times it's cool, and then you start to earn a respect for it. I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to put it. You get a healthy respect for a machine like that. That just the wildfires is what I'm referring to mainly. Those are pretty
Right.
gnarly. Do
Yes.
you?
Yeah. No,
I
go ahead.
the saying that comes to mind is there's a saying of sailors is um a, a sailor that's not afraid of the ocean is a dead sailor.
This is
And
very true.
Yes.
I imagine there's a similarity there with what you're doing.
100%, 100% similarity. It's a great job though, and I love it, and
Yeah.
I've loved it. It was something that my old man is a firefighter too,
Oh.
and so I picked it up, and I've been doing it for I don't know 5 6 years now.
That's exactly what I wanted to
Wow.
ask you next. Was there something in your childhood that pushed you in that direction?
Do you want to hear the story of what made me want to go down that path?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
All right, it's only a couple minutes, but I don't know if you've ever been out to Havasu, if you've ever been boating, but a lot of people like to go out there during the summer, and it's just one of those hobbies that firefighters have. So consequently, they're going to bring their kids out to the river with them. The fireman fun weeks and just going out to the river in the summertime is just something that we like to do. So we were out there one summer, and I distinctly remember I was about 16 years old, and I was 16 going on like 25, at least I thought. And we're out at the river, we're having a great time, and we were sitting, on the beach hanging out, and there's sea-doos all over the place, zinging back and forth. Two of those sea-doos decided that they wanted to play chicken, and they ran right into each other, like
Oh
a
God.
couple, like 100 yards off the shore, and like really, really fast, very, very loud, like jacked them up. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, holy cow! And I was with, of course, a bunch of firemen, paramedics, um, other LA County firemen, LA City firemen, just a bunch of firemen whom happened to have their go bags with them. And it's just one of those weird things that we do sometimes. We all have one
Right.
in our car.
Yeah.
So we ended up jumping on the boat, and my dad grabs me to come with him. So there's like three or four of us, and we motor out to these people who are kind of just floating there in the water. And the one girl's leg was mangled, it was destroyed, like
God.
everything was busted. We pulled these people out of the water, we got them onto the boat, and I was just there, not really doing anything. I'm only 16, I don't really know what's going on, but I could hold an IV bag, you know what I mean? I could be a
Right.
glorified IV pole. And we took him to shore. We got him in and met up with the ambulance on the dock. And we're cruising back. And it was just like, oh, okay, we're done. We cruise back, no big deal. And I'm sitting there just like, what just happened? Like,
Oh
we just
God.
did all that. Like, it was a high stress situation for me, but these guys just handled it. And
Yeah.
it was like stuff
Right.
was happening, stuff was going on, and they just went and they handled business and they came back. And I don't know, I was around that type of energy, around people just doing that type of thing.
Right.
It stuck with me for a little while. It stuck with me for a little while. So as I'm going through life and I'm doing job after job, trying to figure out what it is that I want to do, what my calling and what my passion is in life, that always sat there. It always lingered, and eventually I circled back to that that career path, I guess.
Yeah.
But there was definitely an event, I suppose.
That's pretty
Right.
wild. Um, yeah, I I've been having these conversations with people about things that we think are a big deal, and I keep thinking in terms of like, so if you need to make a customer service phone call to somebody in another country that
Hmm.
is having a little trouble with English about your cell phone bill, but you've just pulled an 8-year-old out of a burning car with her mother, and you've walked away from the car right before it, caught irreparably on fire. That phone call is not very difficult.
It's kind of
Yeah.
a perspective thing, huh?
Like you don't have too much trouble with your annoying customer service phone call in that context. I think of it that way as like struggle is often contextual.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering, are you finding ways to apply that context? Does it last once you're like, because you're working in these stressful situations relatively often due to what you're dealing with. Are you able to utilize that to make other aspects of your life feel kind of more at ease?
100%. 100%. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. In fact, it almost goes a little bit, it extends past that, like a rebound effect. And so I could be apathetic in situations where other people would be like, dude, why aren't you upset right now?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, am I supposed to be upset? Like,
Right.
it's hard. It's hard because every day you get hit with everyone else's emergencies, everyone else's problems. And
Yeah.
it's typically the problems that they don't know how to fix.
Yeah. So you
You have to.
can lose perspective in the opposite direction, is what you're saying. Okay. Interesting. Interesting.
Hmm.
Is it a net gain for you at this point, or do you feel like that's an issue?
I feel like it's not an issue because it's given me the tools to handle stressful situations with poise
Yeah.
and pause. And I think that's a super valuable asset and a very, very useful tool to have in your toolbox. But
Yeah.
and the reason why it hasn't gotten really bad is because I take the steps that you need to take to get that shit off your mind.
Yes.
You got to unload. You got to empty the bucket because the bucket starts to
Oh
fill
yeah.
up. And if you don't empty the bucket through constructive outlets with friends and family and coworkers and peers and mentors and, other people that you're close with, then it can fill up pretty quickly.
That's super
Wow.
cool.
And I
Brandon,
gotta say,
yeah, I
yeah,
imagine you have some burning questions. Let's do it.
yeah. I mean, I gotta. When it comes to heroic acts compared to the mundane inconveniences of every day, it's very hard to put them, conceptually side by side. But what I find very interesting is from the friends in my life who are either first responders or volunteers in fields like that, they always have this outlook on life. They find life to be much more precious, but
Hmm.
they're not as they are very cautious in the ways that no normal person is. So
Hmm.
the average family is like scared to death of candles to a large extent. They're like, oh God, these could cause a fire. But like the volunteer firemen I know are always worried about you have two outlets plugged in together through two extenders, and like it's a very different outlook of what danger is in a less human approach to danger and more of an ideological approach, if that makes any sense. It's more
Makes a
about
ton
the
of sense.
anticipation.
It makes a ton of sense. Yep.
So I
But
wonder,
trust
like,
me,
how do you apply that? The same kind of how have your fears changed? I think is a good question after seeing this side of
mm,
the world from a volunteer perspective.
that's a good question. Not a question very many people ask either. Because, like you said, a lot of people would be scared of normal things, sharks, spiders, all like other kinds of stuff. And me, I'm seeing long drives without any hospitals nearby or no trauma centers within flying distance,
Right.
or or I see dead zones where I know that, like, oh man, if we can't call for help, we ain't getting help.
Right.
Or I see, for example, like the eaves open during a wildfire, and you have those eaves where your attic vents are up underneath your
Mm-hmm.
roof. And I'm like, that's how 95% of those houses are going to catch fire. Embers flying right into those eaves. If only
Really?
they would cover their eaves, their houses wouldn't burn down. Or cover their
Wow.
attic vents. It's just little things
Right.
like that that we can kind of, I don't know, kind of pick up on and you see. But definitely have a healthy fear for highways and vehicles. A healthy
Huh.
respect for those heavy, heavy machines.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredibly interesting. I'm afraid of driving just from the perspective of, giant metal bullets driven by sacks of meat, you know?
True.
We're
True.
terrifying. I don't
We
know
are
why
very
we're allowed
mortal.
to do it. I
Hmm.
it doesn't
Yeah,
make sense.
we're just big bags of squishy pink flesh, man.
Oh, it's so terrifying. I just learned to
Mhm.
drive. We were like, this seems good. 70, 80 miles an hour? Legal. Let's do it.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Or you can drive like a Class A motorhome without any extra license.
yeah, that's always been so weird to me. Like a school bus or anything, you have to go through and get your certifications. You want to drive a semi certifications, but if you have like a tow hitch, they're just like, go for it.
Yep.
That makes no sense because people don't know how to balance, right? Weight is one of the biggest causes for accidents, right? People don't know either how to connect to their vehicle to make sure that they actually have it securely connected, or they don't balance their weight right and they go fishtailing off the road. Dear
It
God,
sounds right. Some
the
of
amount of
those,
accidents.
oh yeah, it's nuts.
Oh,
So, how has it made
yeah,
you
go ahead.
braver in things that aren't this?
Kind of circling back to what you had to talk about earlier in terms of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There's a saying that I heard that stuck with me years ago where it said, if everybody in the room put their problems in the middle, pretty sure you take yours back. And I'm like, ah, well said. Well
Yeah,
said. There's a lot of problems in the world, and there's a
yeah.
lot of people. So like, I don't know how many times a day I say this, Josh. I say it can always get worse so many times a day. It
Because
can
you
always
know.
get, yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, let's
God.
let's switch. Let's make a hard left turn. What got you interested in finance?
That's a really good question too. Well, the pandemic gave me the time
Hmm.
to really hone in those skills. And so I spent a lot of months getting deep into picking out the perfect basket of ETFs for long term growth for myself,
Uh-huh.
right? I went down the whole ETF path. But long story short, it was TikTok who showed me the layman investor
Mhm.
who talked about the rich dad, poor dad, right? And that's all I needed. I
Yeah,
just needed to be introduced to the opening of the rabbit hole.
yeah.
Right.
And I'd known enough to understand the basics of how it works. So I just kind of tumbled down into this tax, finance, business building, and investing rabbit hole. The investing in one fork and the business on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And it was absolutely fascinating to me because I
Right.
love being in control of my own money and in control of my own destiny. And so if I can choose a problem and figure out like, oh, hey, I need $3.2 million in an interest bearing account to live off the interest to maintain this amount of salary. If I know that number, I can work backwards.
Yeah.
Right.
I can come up with like a tangible plan to execute on a monthly basis. It's so
Right.
cool. It's so cool.
Agreed.
That's one of the things about your TikTok channel that I found to be the most interesting. I see so many
Hmm.
people doing content like mine, which is just educating people on the basics of how to trade stock and everything. But
Hmm.
there are very few people that go into the implications of running a company and then the tax advantages that you can leverage through S corps and LLCs and entrepreneurship. That is content I've yet to see on the platform to the degree that you do it. Can you talk a little bit about where your knowledge in, I don't want to call them specifically loopholes, but those, tax incentive programs that people don't realize that they can take advantage of? Where did that knowledge come from?
Mm. Yeah, as I was going down the rabbit hole trying to figure out the right tax professional, look,
Hmm.
it all started because I thought that in order to save money on taxes, you had to be shady and do shady shit. But that's not true. I just what I thought. I thought you had to be
Right.
shady, and so I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, how can I do it like without being shady? Well, it turns out there's plenty of ways,
Yeah.
and you just have to find the people that know the rules. So
Ah,
that's kind of what path I went down. I'm like, okay, so who knows the rules to the extent that I need on my team? So I read a book called Tax Free Wealth, written by Tom Wheelwright. And after I read the book, I was like, oh my God, dude, this is legit. He was the tax
right.
guy for Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And so I called him and I literally called him and
Uh-huh.
I tried to get him to do my taxes or at least point me in the right direction. And that's how I got introduced to my CPA, my accountant. And so that CPA got
Okay.
me introduced, and I started doing Tom Wheelwright's training and his classes and his webinars, and
Sure.
just trying to absorb everything he had, his podcasts, his books, and that's when I started testing out his theories with my own companies and with my own CPA.
Ah,
And so I tested it, and I'm like, oh shit, it works. Very cool.
Tell me a little bit more about that phone call, because that's the kind of phone call that somebody who runs towards burning buildings might make, but a lot of people wouldn't.
I was probably a little out of my element, that's for sure. But there was a number in the book for his firm, and I'm like, I want to talk to Tom. Like, I want him to do my taxes. I don't care how much it costs. Like, I'm enamored by this guy, the way that he's able to take situations and make them work.
Yeah.
And of course, he doesn't do taxes for regular people anymore. He runs, a huge firm. But in my own naivete. Yeah, I decided to call anyway. So I actually got one of his staff members, and his staff member was like, "Oh yeah, we can help you out. Let me see what you're trying to do. Let me get a feel for your company and your business, and we'll match you up to the right person." And so Tom hires people. He hires entrepreneurs. You have to be an entrepreneur, but he hires CPAs that are entrepreneurs and trains them how to do taxes the way that he does taxes. And so I just started talking to my tax guy a lot. I just texting him, talking to him. Hey, how do you do this? Hey, how can we do this? Hey, how can we do this? And I was like, man, why didn't anybody tell me this in school? That's bullshit, man. Why didn't anybody teach me this? Why is there no tax classes? Why is there no company formation taxes or classes? And so that's when I figured there was a need for it. And so I just was messing around and making some videos, and people liked them.
All right, that's fantastic.
They're likable.
What you've hit on, they're incredibly. The thing about the videos, right?
Nice of you guys to say.
Well, the thing about the videos is the topic is so incredibly mind-numbingly boring, and yet I keep watching them. Like, that is a wondrous skill to be able to put these topics into an actually like edible format. And you talk about how we should be teaching these things in school, and I mean, obviously this is the conversation of a lifetime, right? Everyone talks about this, how school is pretty much just a regurgitation pool. But at least I'm relatively young. I'm only 21, about 22. But when I was on the tail end of my high school experience, one of the state mandated classes in my state, Indiana, was a business finance and literature type program where we had to learn about credit cards and taxes and the idea of forming a company. So it seems like we might be on the upswing of the education system where that is going to be common knowledge to an extent. But I wish it was an elective that wasn't, something that I could have, at a young age, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And if from middle school on, I could have been taking elective courses to learn about that, oh my God, I totally would have been.
I think something that puts the ridiculousness of it in perspective is we're going to have the type of high school class that would teach a child how to write a check after checks no longer are even relevant. That's how long it's taking us. And it's like,
100%.
Okay, we need to take our time when we decide what to teach children, because it's a touchy thing. We need to think carefully, for sure, about how we're going to guide them and what we're going to put into the curriculum. But to write a check, there are very few children who are taught what it's like to write a check in school. And for all the time that we have had checkbooks, we haven't taught them. And now we're just getting to the point where we might be capable of teaching them how to balance a checkbook, and there aren't checkbooks anymore.
Right.
That's a long time.
Exactly. Well, to explain to a kid that you try to explain to someone who's 13 or 14 today the idea of what balancing a checkbook means, because the first thing they're going to ask is, why wouldn't you just check your balance?
Yeah. Why would you let the computer do it?
And it's like, you realize we didn't have that. We couldn't just on demand see, because, well, in the early 2000s, even when that was capable, there was a bunch of fear mongering about it because people were mortified about having their bank info online. They were like, no way am I going to access this on my computer. I only want the bank. I want to have to walk into the bank to get that. And then smartphones. That changed everything.
I love watching those interviews about the internet too when it came out. Oh, I don't know about this, guys. I don't know. This is too scary.
Well, it was a mix of it's too scary and it's a fad. I find that really interesting. I wonder what we all are looking at now and just seeing as a fad. I think a lot of
Bitcoin.
people... Bitcoin, that's one. I also I'm a professional in the VR industry, and that is
Nice.
one that people keep looking at as kind of a fad. And I think
Mm-mm.
maybe in the short term VR is, but AR is the offshoot that matters.
I
AR
have a
is where
feeling that we're going to go to work in VR within the next 10 years. People are going to be logging in, going to work like the Oasis.
yeah, I don't I
Why
don't
Especially
know.
if we
I
not?
can tie that in with a
right,
digital currency too. Oh,
right.
So let's go
Well,
there.
yeah.
Tell
Yeah,
me
let's do it.
tell me your thoughts on crypto. Let's start with the surface level. Uh, what's your overall thought on it?
it's eventually either going to be zero or everything.
I
I'm not sure which one.
I don't see
Yeah.
how it won't happen eventually.
I know. I
Yeah.
can't think of a way. Can you think of a way that Bitcoin could go away? Because I've only been able to come up
Yes.
with one reason.
All right. One,
Governmental.
two, three. War.
Quantum computing. Okay.
Oh, okay.
What's the difference? No. I was gonna say the
That's good.
government. I
That's
figured
good.
if there was a if the world governments don't acknowledge and accept it, it's dead in the water until the entire world decides to go unregulated and say screw, what the governments say,
Yeah, well, I don't think
which is possible.
I think if they just deny it, that's not enough. I think that Bitcoin will keep going.
Mhm.
And eventually
Right.
what you just described will
Yeah.
happen is they would just say, well, fuck it, we're doing Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to have like active heavy regulation to make it go away.
Hmm.
It'd be
Um,
tough
yeah.
physically to make the whole blockchain disappear, though, and to dissolve the currency, the whole network as a whole. You would have to simultaneously destroy every single copy of every blockchain on every single computer in the
Yeah.
world. So
And
it's going
you'd
to be
have to
very
chase
difficult.
after every extremist security freak on earth. Like,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and we've got a lot of those.
We
And
got a lot.
I don't say that as an insult.
Mm-mm.
I'm just saying there's a lot of people that are into their security.
Oh,
And
yes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the things you hear about, like where people stock a Bitcoin, and like where people are hiding flash drives,
Yeah.
and how
Hmm.
they go into that process of dealing with their security. Not to mention that like some people are getting millions of dollars stolen from a scratched password, scribbled
Right?
password on a piece of paper at a party.
Right.
Um, but there's also a lot of people that care about this idea
Hmm.
the way people
Yeah.
cared about the Declaration of Independence.
It's almost like like a religious type of like attachment to the idea
Oh
of it.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And
Yeah.
Brandon,
it's incredibly, yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say you have some doubts, I think, in the crypto area.
Yeah.
What's your side of it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I have been involved with crypto, I mean, Bitcoin's rise and fall since like 2009, 2010. I mean, I've been watching it for an extremely long time. My brother was looking at being invested in it back when it was like 50 cents. Everyone was in this, pool of when it first, anyone who was on, like Dig or Reddit or 4chan back then knew about Bitcoin, but that was pretty much it. It
Hmm.
was localized just to the internet nerds. And then as it grew and grew, the thing that I keep running into is not the fact that it won't one day potentially take over. I think that's totally feasible. It's just about the widespread adoption of it from accepting sources. So like there are very very niche areas where my Bitcoin is accepted as a tradable currency, and so long as it's only an investment route, it is worthless as a commodity. This is the same thing where gold is only worth gold because people think gold is worth gold, and that's exactly what Bitcoin is. But
Hmm.
there's a reason that the gold standard and the silver standard are dead and dying and becoming less and less valuable as a global exchange currency because they can't be used. I can't walk in and give someone gold for something. And there's no easy way for me to turn that gold into something else without going through a middleman that takes a big cut, that da 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 da. And that's what I worry about Bitcoin. Bitcoin will become adopted, everyone will use it in different areas, and then eventually you're going to have to be able to walk into a Best Buy and use your Bitcoin to order something, and you're not going to be able to. But everyone has $20,000 worth of it. So everyone just converts it to USD, and then what's the point? Bitcoin is just a holding investment like any other stock. It's not like I can trade and borrow a stock between you and I, Josh. So it's like my whole issue is that if it's supposed to be a deregulated currency, it's not really achieving the goal of a currency yet.
You're right. It hasn't achieved a goal of currency for sure. Definitely not.
Right.
But I think there's this one specific event that will help the adoption, because you talked a little bit about the adoption, right?
Yeah.
Because mass adoption, of course, is a long way off. We're very, very, very
Sure.
low on the scale of adoption. But let me throw this idea by you. Let me see what you think. Let me hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
So we are all familiar with Starlink and the satellite network that Elon Musk is putting up, which potentially can bring high speed, low latency, global Wi-Fi to the whole world, right? Doesn't matter where you are. You don't need anything but a device that can connect to the sky, which is a big deal. When that happens and the people are able to get connected globally, we're not going to be forced to stay within our networks, right? And we can branch out and start accepting services from people all over the world. I'm already doing it. I already have copywriters and designers in all over the world that are working for me.
Right.
And they just happen to be the ones connected to the high-speed internet because they're in the, the modernized areas with infrastructure. So what happens when everybody is able to get access to the internet, but not access to central banks?
Yeah.
They'll need a way to transmit a store of value. And I don't think that they're going to be sending Bitcoin to each other, but some other form of currency with a little more utility, faster transaction speeds, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. But what do you think about global connection? How are these people going to send value to each other across the internet?
Yeah.
Well,
So in October, Starlink had 835 satellites. I think they sent up another launch a while ago. The
Webull.
constellation, I believe they're aiming for 2,000 before worldwide spread. And the beautiful thing about Starlink is that you literally can be in a remote village with the smallest array of solar panels and a tiny power bank and a laptop. And you now have fast connected internet and you can do everything that you've ever dreamed of from anywhere that you
Mhm.
can get a solar connection.
You can do gigs on
That,
Fiverr or stream Counter-Strike Go.
yeah,
Just
exactly.
do
That
whatever you
right
want.
there, and with the advent of things like Google Stadia becoming more popular, where you can play anything through cloud computing or through Fusion 360 or Adobe using cloud computing to do the hard work for your machine, like at a certain point, there is no reason to have anything more than a tablet or a phone or a Google Glass on your head, because everything is done outside of your scope of technology. So
Mhm.
what happens, like you said, when Bitcoin's transaction fees are a little too high and they're a little too slow, someone's going to compete, and I agree. And I think that crypto, whatever it may be, or if Bitcoin somehow has like a third party software
Mhm.
company ends up making a faster transaction network, that would be the future of currency. And I think you're right. I think that if that is the way that the world moves and everyone sees that Starlink and uh whatever Amazon's is, I think Kuiper or Kuiper, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it is Kuiper. Like I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I remember like, oh, they're referencing the asteroid belt, and yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm a space dork. I love space stuff.
Yeah, me as well. And so that is another great example of just worldwide connected internet. So I agree. And I think that Bitcoin or Litecoin or Ethereum or Compound, whatever they end up choosing, very well could be. The problem, as I will always say until I see it proven wrong, is the government. There's two things in life, right? There's death and taxes.
Mhm.
If the government can't control your income, it becomes a nightmare for the
Mhm.
countries. So that is always going to be the biggest hit of adoption when it comes to Bitcoin. I think this is the first year the IRS is sending out tax forms that ask about crypto investments,
It's true.
and it's very, very unregulated and weird, and you don't actually have to answer it, and there's nothing they can actually do about it, and it's like, oh God. But that I wonder from your side of the world, right? Knowing the tax implications, how do you think that crypto fits in with the world governments needing you to pay taxes?
I don't know how they're gonna solve that problem. They can't even solve the DMV. They
They
can't even
yeah,
can't solve
fix. They can't
taxes
even
as
fix
it is.
voting. Like
Yeah,
there's so many gaps in their knowledge base. And
right.
if you just look at the state of their computing right now, I don't really think they even. They're so far behind.
they
Yeah.
really are.
So
I'm
far.
gonna chip in one other thought on the Bitcoin
Yeah, go for it.
itself. Is personally, I don't believe that it needs to have a widespread adoption in terms of transaction. Uh,
Okay.
I think that it's getting more widespread adoption than we think already,
Mhm.
because the people that are utilizing Bitcoin aren't American investors. They're African workers. Those are the
Right.
people that's where some of the most Bitcoin transactions are happening is on Cash App amongst
Right.
people in Africa. But I think I think that the store of value is more practical. I don't think that Bitcoin was designed so Bitcoin doesn't I don't think that Bitcoin is really designed as a cryptocurrency. It's designed as the store of value.
I
Uh,
really do agree with you on the gold standard, digital
yes,
gold. Yeah.
because
Right.
the thing is we could use a digital dollar. You know, I mean, they're working on it. You know, they'll get there
Right.
at their snail's pace eventually. Maybe it'll be too late, but uh, we could have a digital dollar. We certainly have the Chinese digital dollar that's gonna you know be a powerful force in the future, and we could still have Bitcoin as a store of value because as you said, Brandon, it's gold is gold because we agree that gold is gold,
Right.
and it's going to be have to be the same thing for Bitcoin where we agree that Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and
Right.
I really can't find a good argument why not. Um, I don't know if it's true, but I heard a story once about Big Macs once being used as a reference for currency value.
Really?
Oh, that's like 4 Big Macs, man.
Huh.
Yeah, because they were in so many different countries that people were
Right.
like, "Oh, we'll use this."
Oh, just like equate the exchange rate to Big
Yeah,
Mac.
yeah. I'm not sure if that's a true
Yeah.
story, but it's
Logically feasible.
it's close enough to a useful truth. Like it makes
Right.
sense. And so for people to agree on something as secure and tight as Bitcoin doesn't seem too big of a stretch for me.
No.
And the people that are getting into it now, oh man, I mean, it's getting to some pretty you know, serious scale at this point where with
Yeah.
PayPal just announcing their adoption and JP Morgan putting in, you know, starting to make their meetings and think their
Yeah.
thoughts, you know, it's getting interesting. Not to mention that it went boop, which is always fun. Uh,
Every time it goes up, it
yeah,
makes it better.
and I heard an interesting point that I think this was Anthony Pompliano that I heard it from was that it hasn't reached its all-time high, but it has reached its all-time high relative to its market cap. So
Yeah.
there were
Oh yeah.
less Bitcoin when Bitcoin reached its all-time high. So in relation to the market cap, the value of Bitcoin is actually currently at an all-time high, which is a really interesting thought.
That is
Um,
very interesting. I didn't think about that.
yeah,
Can we talk about market cap for a minute? Because
please do.
I was researching that
Actually,
for a YouTube
could
video that
you
I was working on.
explain what market cap is?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, in one sentence, market cap is the total value of all of it in the world, right? It's the
Yep.
amount of it
Got
times
it.
the price of it.
Right.
So, for those viewers who are a little unsure of it, so the market cap of gold right now I saw you mentioned a number different than me, and I didn't do a whole lot of research. So, where did you get the market cap number for gold from?
I didn't do a whole lot of research either.
Okay, so I kind of put it at around 3 to 8 million. I've seen a range in there, or trillion, excuse me, trillion.
Okay.
3 to 8 trillion for the market cap for gold currently.
Yeah.
So, well, even if we go at the low end, we'll just even say three, just for the low end for sake of math.
Sure.
And the current, like in November, so like, yeah, a couple weeks ago, the Bitcoin market cap was 250 billion, which is 12 times less than that of the lowest potential of gold.
Yeah.
So even if it just increased to meet the market cap of gold, you'd be looking at quite a significant multiple in the price per Bitcoin. And so I don't even know how to go beyond that in terms of math, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it's a reasonable thought, and look, we're living in a crazy time where thoughts that are just stupid should be thought. So we're working on getting to Mars.
Mm-hmm.
And can you do an electronic transfer of gold to Mars? That would be a little tricky. But you could transfer crypto. And okay, so let's say we have a multi-planetary economy. Things get complicated real quick when we start talking about store of value, and good old Earth is the only place you can store your value.
Mm-hmm.
That is a power that Martians are not going to want Earth to have. I mean,
true.
Yes, I know I'm getting way out there. We don't have any Martians
but
yet. But
it's true,
if you think in these conceptual terms of like, okay, let's say we did go multiplanetary. Well, there's going to be some form of a relationship, especially at the beginning, just for the sake of survival. Eventually, there's going to be a power struggle. There's no way there won't be a power struggle. And if that's the case, then whoever's up on the big red planet, they're not going to want whatever their version of wealth is to be trapped. And we see this play out in smaller versions in countries all the time.
We do.
There's many examples of how on Earth, like, we don't have to go far for this far out for this to make sense. I just like to go out far out. It's fun.
It's fun.
But in terms of just the governments on Earth, like the times when people feel safe, like taking a stand, is when they've found a way to successfully pull their money out of the thing that's threatening them.
Right. Yeah.
Have you seen the show Years and Years? Any of you, have you seen that show?
I have not.
No.
There's one distinct show. It's just like kind of a sci-fi show. It goes into the future. Like basically if Trump wins and all these things happen, war with China and disease, all these things, right? But there's this one specific part I'm referencing, which is when there was a modern day run on the banks.
Ah.
The guy just sells his house. It's at the peak of the market. He just sells his house. They're going to move out of the city, get away from all the noise. Escrow closes. I'll move the money on Monday. I always move the money on Monday morning. And there's a run on the bank. And it's gone. It's just gone. He doesn't get it. It's gone. They have nothing after that. And just because they said, no, we're not going to give it to you. They shut their doors. So I don't know. I kind of something about giving the power back to the people in a certain sense. There's part of me that's like, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, but the people deserve the power.
Yeah.
And I mean, so the people, this is the thing with democracy, right? And capitalism and socialism is that you forego your individual liberties for letting some bigger entity take over on your behalf, and then you entrust them with people that you vote in, that you feel are confident to do the job you want them to do, to protect your rights so that you can exist on a larger scale, smaller, if that makes sense. So because you have a government and you have a democracy, you have liberties to do bigger things on a smaller scale because the government is propping you up to do things like have $100,000 in debt with only $10,000 to your name. You would not be able to do that as an individual. So through a government and through a bank system, so the banks are controlled by the government and the government is controlled by you, but you are not in control of the bank. You have to go through the government to get control of your bank now, right? So you have added steps, but you get more liberties while foregoing your liberties. And it's an incredibly interesting thing when you think about like a Martian colony. The whole time you're talking about this, Josh, I'm just thinking of like the American Revolution. We're going to have the exact same argument with Martians, I think. Is this taxation without representation? It's going to take, if we have a perfect light speed internet connection, 7 minutes for them to have their wealth from Earth to Mars. It will take 7 minutes. There is no way around that. 7 minutes at, like, from here to the sun, from here to Mars. It's going to take minutes. How are they going to participate in a stock market? They're going to
Right.
only have mutual funds. They have to wait for the day to close to be able to trade. They can't do anything with that. How are they going to be able to pull funds in case of an economic disaster? They're going to be minutes and minutes and minutes behind us. But they have no choice except to have their wealth be valued on Earth. And that's going to cause some real big fucking problems really quick. Because they can't even know that something happened until 7 minutes after it happened, and then another 7 minutes to send a response.
It's a complex problem. And
It's going to be hell.
I wonder if one day Mars will be where it originates, and then Earth doesn't know about it for 7 minutes. You could see a time when it flip flops even.
It's entirely possible. It's way more possible for things like that to happen than we think. I mean, it happened between U.S. and Great Britain.
What are the chances of seeing an asteroid mining company in our lifetime?
I think very high.
Very high, if not
Extremely.
SpaceX.
Yeah, I mean,
think
there's already so many finances going towards asteroid mining. I mean, and it's
fascinating.
Oh yeah, it's
Oh
like
my
it's
God.
such
We
a
were talking
business
about market
opportunity.
caps. Yeah, market caps. This is another great opportunity. What happens when you have a money printer on iron?
Right? Oh, you
What
need more
happens
iron?
when
Here,
you
just
can
go grab
print
it.
iron?
Crazy,
It's
man.
wild.
Right? What is an iPhone worth if every single component in it can be mined extremely cheap? And we now have infinite access. What happens to fossil fuel companies if we happen to find oil on other planets, on like a sentient life form planet? In 400, 500 years, do we have oil companies again?
I'll have one last
Who
space
knows?
thought for you. I'll have one last space thought for you. I was thinking about this the other day. That I think it's just hilarious and delightful to think about it. Is spaceships are currently at the point where we don't have a Ford Model T. So it's like we think about, if you think about what spaceships have done, it's like, oh my God, it is the height.
I see what you're saying.
Yes.
Oh
It's the height of human achievement, right? Spaceships we have done incredible things. There's no denying it. It's jaw-dropping what we've accomplished in our space race already, especially when it switched to the commercial space race. But the Ford Model T version of a spaceship hasn't even begun. So to give for anybody who's still looking at me like I'm a crazy person, which I am, but you know, I enjoy it. The idea is like Ford Model T was one of the first things that was able to be mass produced. Henry Ford accomplished mass production at a level that had never been done before. He innovated not just cars, but production itself. He innovated the act of creation. And everyone after him has imitated him to some degree or another. Anyone that creates a physical object has to take into account the process that Henry Ford went through and able to learn how to get to a level of mass production to hit scale.
Right.
It's basically unless you make all custom products, it's the only way to have a successful business creating a physical product is to have some element of what Henry Ford did, that mass production. And that has not yet occurred in the space industry, which means that we don't have a Ford Model T, the crappiest, boringest, baby little stuffy, like broke down constantly Ford Model T. Like we don't have one yet.
Yeah,
That's
and
crazy to say.
Yeah,
It's mind-boggling, right?
It
one of
really
the-
is.
one
Which
of the
means that
interesting
someday
things is-
people are going to look at the spaceships that we're creating now. After we've hit mass production level on spaceships, somebody are going to look at the spaceships that we have now and be like, "Wow, it's so amazing that they got to that level, that they could make that spaceship. It was such a hunk of crap. I don't know how they made it work."
Yeah, and that
It's so
is
cute.
That's one of the most important things I think we'll see in our lifetime. People that are 80, 90 now were very well alive when we went to the moon, and they get to look at those rockets and say, "Oh yeah, what a piece of shit that was." You know,
Uh-huh.
literally a pen and a paperclip.
Yep.
And here we are now, right, with the self-driving rocket ships that no one even has to think about, right? When
Mm-hmm.
the docking just occurred on the ISS, you literally just saw like the four crewmates like
Yeah.
just sitting in the capsule while it docked itself. It's like we're at a point
Beautiful.
now.
Oh, it's so
What I
true.
think is interesting about the analogy, though, is that when creating the car, Henry Ford had in mind that every single human would have their own car. I don't know if we're building the space race with the anticipation that every single person will have their own rocket. So I think that the scale in which you're imagining the Model T um, isn't exactly there. I
I
feel
don't
like,
think it matters because
I mean,
if
yes, I
if
see what you mean.
even if every like so did every individual get a car? Not close.
Right,
Not remotely close.
right,
So it's like let's say every major business gets a spaceship.
right,
That's still a
right.
level of innovation that is so far beyond what has occurred right now. Like,
I think the
when
biggest
Walmart
thing.
has their freight spaceships, you
Oh,
know,
right. Yeah,
like to get to that level,
right.
that's wild.
Well, and
Mm.
this will be the last note on this, but SpaceX's goal is to create the Starship hopper system where we can get across the world in 40 minutes. And that'll be
I love
great
that.
for shipping, right? That will be what it's used for. It'll be more commercial. And people will just happen to be on board. Um, the real idea is about shipping things across the country or across the world very, very quickly. But the biggest thing to me is that the more spaceships we have, the advancements will not come with how the rocket is boosted or the fuel that it uses. Those things will change very slowly. The big change is when and under what conditions can we launch? Those are the innovations of the next 10, 20 years that have to be
Oh yeah.
solved for that to come true. Because right
Mm.
now, if there is a light breeze, it gets fucking canceled every time. You have to get to a point where rain or shine, hurricane or not, that can lift off and get there. That
I
will
th-
be the big
I
innovation that's
think we'll
created.
get there. I think it'll happen.
Oh yeah. Well,
So,
because they're gonna look back at today and they're gonna say, "How the hell could they not launch in the rain?"
yeah.
And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we could. It's like when you have the first ever plane, it's like they couldn't lift it off for the fourth time when the ground was wet because they couldn't roll fast enough, and that's just
Yep.
such a crazy problem to have.
Yep. I hear what
Okay,
you're
so
saying.
I'm switching gears.
Yeah.
In light of to have some sort of a connection here when we were talking about asteroid mining, you know, my next question naturally would be, who should start a business and who shouldn't?
Mm.
That's my next question.
In general.
Yeah, yeah, bringing it back to Earth. Like,
Not Martian
right now
business.
it's cool to start a business, right?
Mm.
But I want to talk about business with you, and my first question is who should start one and who shouldn't?
I think who shouldn't is the much more. That's a hard one to answer.
I kind of think of it. I don't know if you just said what I was thinking, Brandon, but man, it's almost more of a matter of who should not start a business.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's so many benefits.
Yeah.
There's so many benefits if you can just come up with just anything that you do.
Mhm.
Like, let's Brandon, give me a random job.
Uh, an accountant.
Oh, you say you're an accountant, you work for an accounting firm, 9 to 5, you're getting a job. There are so many reasons why you should start your business on the side and start marketing yourself around your personal brand and taking clients on yourself and cutting out the middleman of the employer. However, there's those people that don't have the discipline to be able to execute on that, and some people just want to work. And I don't know, how do you find those people? How do you differentiate that? Do those people actually really just want to work, or do they just not know?
Well, that was gonna. Yeah. So my question is, that would be the one thing. That would be my answer. Just
Mm-hmm.
those that decide the 9 to 5 growl and grind is the exact thing that they want in their life. But is it? Is that really what they want, or is that just, well, my dad worked at a factory for 20 years, and then he worked at another factory for 40, and then he died. he kept me and my sister and his wife together, so I guess that's what I gotta do, right?
Josh, does this sound familiar? Um, Graduate high school, go away to college, come back with a bunch of debt, go buy a house, work really, really hard to try and pay off that debt for a while, get sick to the point where you can't work anymore, and then just barely scrape by until you die.
I feel like
That's
I've heard that before.
I've heard
right.
that before.
Yeah, that's what I was taught too. And I've heard those words literally come out of your mouth, and I'm like, oh, hey, I was taught that too. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, that's not the only way.
agreed.
That is not the only way.
Business owners are incredibly smart. They're incredibly hard workers. They've got millions of dollars before they start their business. They spent 40 years planning, and unless you've got those things, you can't do it. That was what I always heard. Is you had to be this genius who had millions of dollars set aside, ready to go. Your whole life was invested in just becoming an entrepreneur one day. That is not true at
So
all.
here's my next question. What stops them?
I found that it's a lack of education. I really honestly believe that that's a good chunk of it. Not all of it. Not all of it. Because there's a good chunk that has to go towards fear. There's a good chunk that has to go towards a lot of other factors too. But just understanding. If people could just understand that it only costs like $200 to start a company, an EIN and a bank account's free. It's like $200. Like, what do you have to lose? Just try it. But there's so much noise. There's so much information.
I agree. Something you mentioned earlier was like I think it was layman discovering layman investor on TikTok, and then you said something about like getting recommended Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that was all you needed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so wild to me. I think about this fairly often, how people can do so much, and often they need some little kick, some little we look for permission or something in a lot of cases. So a lot of people look for permission to do something.
Do you know how many
Or
people are just so afraid to be judged by their friends and family?
oh my god,
There
yeah,
are so many people that are just so afraid to do anything different from what their friends and family are gonna. Oh, dude,
yeah.
people. Oh, it's sad.
And it's wild. I look at my investing that I do today,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't see a single part of it that I couldn't have done when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it very often. It's something you have to like guard against to not be resentful for, because it's pointless to be resentful about it. It's like this is just the way it is. Um, but I'm blown away at it that I was the kid that was obsessed with timescale. I played video games on like quadruple speed, because not because I was impatient, but because I wanted to see what 1,000 years would play out, like
Can
how it
I?
would play out.
Did you ever play the original Pokemon Red and Blue on Game Boy?
I did not.
Okay.
I do.
Well, okay, so Brandon. Anyways, the game itself, it was a little slow paced, and if you could speed it up in any way, shape, or form, you could have a mega competitive advantage for getting what you wanted in the game. And when Pokemon Stadium came out and you could plug the cartridge into the game, you could unlock a 2 times speed mode to play your game.
Ha 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 ha.
64.
Really?
And so when you talk about that time factor right there, if you could
Right.
see how it goes faster,
Yes.
I'm always been obsessed with trying to find the fastest, most efficient way to get from A to B. I think it's really
Yes.
interesting that you brought that up.
Yes,
Because
yeah, and it's the that would have been my style of game for sure. If I could have gotten a time edge like that, I would have been into
right?
it. Um,
Right.
but yeah, like it's no different now when I look at my investments, because the
hmm
one of the things that gives me great joy is understanding how things develop over time, and
hmm
understand how as people work we create wealth, things get better over time. So if
hmm
you're in the market, you benefit from that simple time factor.
Yes.
And I had I worked for a long time without investing, and when it came time to invest, I, much like you described, I took off, where it was like, oh yeah, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do the other. I would dive into these things that I could have done when I was 15, but I
Right.
waited for a very long time before I did it. And once I had dove in, it felt natural. So I'm curious if you've ever thought about the what gets people to dive in, what gets people to, because it's like I studied about finance and investment for a very long time. Um, but it for me, I mean, and I'm exploring this idea. And my thought is maybe it really is a sort of compounding growth of knowledge. But I'm curious if there's something that enables people like permission or confidence that kicks people into gear to action. Is that a coherent question?
What was it for you?
Well, for me,
What was there like a yeah any specific type of feeling
for me,
almost
it
because it's
was
sometimes
very
not always an event.
cumulative. It felt very cumulative. So for
Uh-huh.
me, it was my life was in shambles, and I started to sort out my health. I started to pay off my loans a little bit faster. I got a
Mm-hmm.
friend that supported my desire to become
Mm-hmm.
financially free.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big factor, was that, I was
Huge.
having
One of the
dinner
biggest.
every week with a friend that every time we would talk about money, and every time he would address it with a sort of nonchalance of, oh yeah, of course you can get out of debt and you can make a lot of money and you can do these things. It was like, well, obviously we're going to sort that out eventually.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
in my mind, I start thinking that way. So I slowly start to pay off debt. I slowly start to handle the things that, had fallen into disarray when you have money anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, crazy shit. Like 2 years ago, I was in such poor health and stupidity that when I went to get my license renewed, I found out that it had been suspended for 2 years. And I didn't
What?
know because 2 years
God.
before that, I had gotten a ticket of which I responsibly paid it off. And, I took care of it.
Yeah.
But there was an additional fee that I did not know about or understand, which, if you're low
Right.
anxiety and you're not too
Mm-hmm.
worried about money, you'll go the extra step to figure out if everything's taken care of, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have money anxiety and you want to get away from it, you'll stop thinking about it as fast as you can. So it was like there was this additional fee that I didn't notice, and then that added up to fees on top of fees. And without my knowledge, my license just got suspended. And I had no idea. And, I had to then take care of that immense price to,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
get that handled.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this very gradual process of shoveling shit, basically,
Yeah.
to get my life into a series of positive patterns that got me to the place where I felt safe, and I
Did
had a
this friend that
safety
you were with
net.
guide you?
To some degree, a
Mm.
lot of it was moral support. But he did like little bits here and there. He talked about like ways to uh like we talked a lot about interest, and
Yeah.
interest, and like, you always pay off the highest interest thing fastest, and for sure I learned things from him, but it was
That's
more the
funny.
moral support and the idea of somebody else was fighting these same battles and thought that it was obvious that you should. But 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 what came out of it was eventually I felt safe
Mm-hmm.
in the position that I was, and I had a safety net, and at that point I felt capable of taking risk, and that was when I
Right.
started investing. That was what the
I think
story
a
for
lot
me.
of it has to do with the safety net there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of
And
it
I
has
and
to
I
do with that
think
safety net.
that's an interesting way to answer the question. I mean, just to remind anyone who just joined, the question, it basically boils down to, how does someone know that they can get out of debt or that they should start a business, right? Like, what is that feeling like to know that I actually want to do this and I want to achieve that and I want to go forward? And for me, in my experience, he actually might be watching, is now a great friend of mine, Waylon, who
Hmm.
runs the business that I have been working at for like the last 2 years of my life. Um, he was one of, if not the biggest influence on my life still to this day, because he proved to me that you can start a business and you don't have to always know what you're doing. You know how many nights me and him stayed up till 2 or 3 in the morning and just decided to do something for the company, and then it just got done that day. And it's like that is
I love
something that
that.
you never
I
hear
love
about
that.
in the business world, is not only the power to do it, but that it is normal to do it. A lot of decisions can be made very quickly, and you don't have to have these massive plans and do exactly this and exactly that. You just do it. And that is the guiding philosophy of everything I've ever done in my life. And it's the number one advice that I always say on this podcast, and I always say to people I talk with, is all you have to do is just start.
Hmm.
Just do it. Do something.
Hmm.
That is the most important part of doing anything. If it wasn't for the time that I had spent with Waylon and the time that I will continue to spend until I die, I wouldn't have ever realized that it was possible for me to sit here where I am now and start up all of these projects that I have, and meet all the people that I'm meeting. It wouldn't be possible. So I think having either like a parent or a guardian or a someone you look up to that can show you that it's possible, that is something that is so hard to realize internally without. It is
You
so
guys
hard.
have a unique superpower now. Because you are financially literate, you have a responsibility to be that friend, to be that
Yeah,
person in those other
exactly.
people's
And I've
lives.
noticed that
I
I've
am that person now.
yeah.
I am the person that's like, yeah, dude, you could totally buy that side by side, or you can chuck it in a bunch of ETFs. Look how much you'll have in 25 years, dude. Check it out. Compounding interest is legit. And then they're
Right.
like, what? But no, it's too late for me. It's too late.
You like
There's
have a
so many
sleepover and
excuses.
everyone's half asleep, and you're just like, you guys thought about an S corp?
Yeah, it's like, hey guys, I'm thinking about trying to start a Bitcoin ETF. Like, what do you guys think? And they're like, gosh, shut up.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming back online. We're back on Twitch. Let me get your faces back in here. All right.
Yeah.
Whew, that was exciting.
That
Um,
was so exciting.
I have no idea where we were.
Oh. Well, you know what? Evan was just asking me a question, and maybe we'll segue with that then.
Let's do it.
Yeah, my question was, Brandon, tell me a little bit more about your mission when it comes to trading stocks. Because the reason I bring this up, there's a lot of different people who go approach stocks a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of curious what your methodology is and what kind of stuff do you practice and preach?
So my biggest thing is I have a long-term account, but I don't talk about it. I find the long-term account, you'll find all the information in the world. Let's talk about the gambling. Let's talk about
Hmm.
the more exciting, terrifying stuff. Because I was horrified. I have had
Hmm.
like a long-term investment portfolio that I was looking into, then created for like 4 or 5 years, and I never wanted in my life to touch options because it just seemed horrifying, and pure risk and moronic stupidity would lead you down that
Hmm.
path. Like someone who has a stupid amount of money is the only person who trades options.
Hmm.
No. So the way that I talk about investing is only in the short term. I'm talking like short-term capital gains tax, everything. You're holding nothing for a year. You're talking about swinging weeklies or monthlies.
Okay.
And so my strategy is, I have a ton of money that I can throw into one place as just whatever. It's money I don't care about. It's money I
Hmm.
can lose and it wouldn't bother me. That is what you have to go into what I'm doing with in mind. So you
Okay.
take any money that you are willing to go to zero with. If it's 100, if it's 500, if it's 1,000, you have to be able to lose all of that money immediately. You burn it. It is gone and nothing in your life fundamentally changes. You have to agree that. If you agree to that, then you're in. So once you're in there, the way that I do it is I'll take something that, like an options chain, whether it be a debit spread or a credit spread, depending on the situation.
Hmm.
I'll normally write it out 2 weeks to 2 months. And I always giving myself a 2 week buffer to get in and out of that position because in 2 weeks, any stock should realistically go to a high and go to a low that is above and below where you bought in. Almost always within 2 weeks on the short
Hmm.
term, that will happen to you. So if you give yourself 2 weeks and it's like a weekend and it's going really bad, you can either choose to take your loss now or chances are, depending on your analysis of the stock, you can probably get back to a break even or at least cover up some of those losses.
So are
I'm
you
looking
analyzing PEs and like balance sheets?
not only that, but I'm also looking at the level 2 data, and I want to see what the options chain looks like. I want to see
Mm,
where are the big investors. Is there any insider trading going on that indicates a move that we're not expecting? Is there a group consensus? Because this is the biggest thing about level 2 data. You can, if you're on Webull or Robinhood, there is data that you can get. 'Cause I know most people are on the smaller platforms. There is data you can get called level 2, where you can see deeper insights into what everyone is buying, right? You know the volume and the open interest, but can you see where that is? Yes. You have to remember, stocks go up because people think that they will. If
right.
everyone thinks that a stock is going up, it's going up. It might not be in the time frame that you expected it to, but it will, because the will of the people is the will of the stock. So open interest is one of the most important things, seeing where the consensus is. If
Mm,
you look at Amazon, right now, Amazon is 50-50. You have no idea. Everyone's throwing
mm.
puts because they're not sure about economic relief from the economy, and everyone's in on calls because Christmas. And so something like that is where you have to pay very close attention. But my
That's
general
interesting.
strategy is 60% profit, get out, 30% net loss, I'm out.
Interesting.
So yeah, the margins are tight and
Okay.
it's very risky. It's incredibly
Okay.
risky.
Would you rather give your money to Warren Buffett or Ray Dalio?
Uh, Probably Warren Buffett.
I hear you.
Uh,
I
and
hear.
and although that goes counter to the way that I play the game,
Okay.
if I'm
Okay.
thinking in the longer term, I know that Ray would be the way to go. Or
Hmm.
shorter term, Ray would probably be the way to go, and longer term would be Warren Buffett. Now, I would give it default to Warren Buffett because Warren Buffett is half of the stock market. If he wants something to happen, it happens.
What do you think about the fact that he pretty much exited from all central bank positions?
That is such an interesting development because there was a big response to that too. And if there
Hmm.
hasn't, if someone will say, but this bank didn't, and it's like, give it like a week or two because they'd had some event going on that week, I'm sure, that bumped it up because everyone is reacting to this. It's the same thing when he pulled out of airlines,
Hmm.
and just like Boeing literally nosedived. And it's like, Warren Buffett is the modern day Nostradamus, and it's not because he actually knows what's going to happen. It's just because now, if he does it, it happens.
It's a pure volume thing, man. I
Yeah,
think
it's
he gets so
crazy.
big.
Imagine
I
having
see
the
the whales.
largest
I've
stock in
seen
the
whales
world.
swing trades. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Continue. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
All right, let's talk about wood burning.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Tell us.
Hmm. So there was this time, like, I don't know if you guys know this, but when you get hired by a fire department, you go through a training academy. It's like a 16, usually around a 16-week academy. You're getting up
Mm.
at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're PTing at 5. You're PTing again at the end of the day. It is a grueling, arduous process. It puts you at your limit and then takes you past it so you know where it is. At the end of that process, we wanted to commemorate that. And so, me being a woodworker, as a hobbyist, I decided to cut out this big walnut 8 to commemorate our tower and the things that we'd gone through. And I really, really, really wanted to wood burn our motto into it. Man, it was going to look so bitchin' if I could just take my soldering iron and burn together and together out, right? On this
Right.
firefighter plaque, the axes and the Halligan on it. It looks super cool. So I grabbed my wood burning tool, my soldering iron, and I fucked up the whole thing.
Oh God.
I wrecked it. It got caught on the grain. And I'm not an unartistic person. Like, I can figure it out. Like, I can make it look good, like, eventually. And I made it, oh, it was so bad. And because it was a hot piece of metal, I couldn't use a stencil and I couldn't do anything else to make it work. So we had to come up with another way. And so my wife had shown me a YouTube video with a process where you could kind of apply a chemical and apply heat and you would get the same effect. And
Right.
so we dove down that rabbit hole. We figured out what it was. We made it work for the project. I bought this ammonium chloride solution. That's the chemical that it was, ammonium chloride,
Mhm.
right? I mixed it up with water. We got it to work. I printed out some stencils and we pulled it off. And it looks so good. And it looks so good,
That's
right?
awesome.
So fast forward a couple months
Hmm.
and I'm like, huh, hey, what if we were to take this idea and put it into a marker? Do you think anyone would buy it? because I just had a conversation with a guy who just launched a business on Amazon, and he filled me in on Alibaba and how it works. And
Right.
if he can do it, I can do it, right? Can we do this? And so I took $500 of the money I had saved, and my wife greenlit it and said, yeah, go for it. Let's do it. So I bought some empty markers for China, and I got them shipped to me. And I bought some sticky paper, and I made labels, and I designed a logo and a label for the marker. And I took some pictures with my cell phone and Googled how to make a white background and remove the background on a photo. And I put it up on Amazon, and I sold one. I called it the scorch marker, right? It's a heat activated marker. So you draw on wood with a marker, you apply heat to it, and it's only going to burn where you drew with a marker. It's just an alternative way to wood burn using chemicals. And so that was it. That's how the scorch marker got born, right? And so we were thinking like, oh, how do we? Okay, so we sold one. That was cool, right? And then 3 months goes by, and we sold one more. Oh yeah, I forgot about this project. Holy cow, this is so cool. Let me go mix them up. I'll sell it, put it in a bag, put a label on it, ship it off to them. And then we sold another one, and then we sold another one, and we started to sell one a week, and then we started to sell one a day, right? And so I started to be like, oh my God, this is real. We could totally do something with this. So I started to put a little bit more effort and energy into it. As the money would come in, I would use it to build another system or expand the business and get a better label, hire a designer, get a better marker, flesh out the Instagram, take better pictures, build out the Amazon listing, hire a design team, run some Facebook ads, just all these little things that you can do to kind of stimulate growth. And it started working. And I remember the day when I was sitting on the couch, and Sarah and I, my wife, and we were like, it's an extra $200 a month. Like, are you kidding me? That's crazy, right? That's crazy. 2 years later, and I don't even touch the product anymore. Yeah, the liquid gets manufactured at a co-packer I hired. It gets shipped to another manufacturer. They package it. They ship it to my fulfillment center. My fulfillment center distributes it, and I sit back and manage the teams and help people execute my vision. So we've kind of grown this company from being a product into a company, a systemized company. And it has been so much fun and so goddamn difficult at times, but so rewarding. You know what I mean? You know that bittersweet, oh God, that was a long ride, but the payoff was sweet. Like it's been kind of one of those things. So it's been great, man. It's taught me a lot. But that is my main squeeze right now. That's the main company that's creating income for us.
Amazing. And you recently sold out.
TikTok. The power of TikTok, you guys. So I tested some of the things that we've done on our own TikToks, right? With interacting with our community and having success with certain styles and types of posts within our niche.
Right.
So I said, okay, let's really dig in and take a look at the things that make people successful on TikTok. Can I replicate it on my other channels? And can I give that information to other people and see them get the same amount of growth? Well, I was expecting to grow a little bit, but I wasn't expecting to get a couple million views in 24 hours on a scorch marker post. And that's all it took. And we were sold out.
It's crazy what TikTok can do. We always talk about it. And that's why we love having TikTok creators on. I mean, really, this is pretty much just a TikTok podcast at this point. But there's not another one out there, really.
So where the attention is.
Yeah, TikTok is one of the most important platforms of our lifetime. No platform has ever been able to give virality like this. Never.
Organic virality based on value. You either entertain, you give information, you educate. There's just so many things you can do. But if you give value on TikTok, you're going to get an organic response. And that is unlike anything else in existence. It's amazing. So cool. It's so cool.
And I have another, I'm a graphic designer.
Nice.
By trade.
Okay.
God, I love the logo.
Vectors or Photoshop?
Yes.
Okay. Wait, which one? Both.
Yes.
Both. Okay, both. Okay, gotcha.
I love your design, and I love the way that you represent your product on social media. I linked it in the Twitch chat for everyone who's wanting to check it out, scorchmarker.com. Oh my God, it's phenomenal.
Thanks,
like
man.
everything I see on your social media and how you show off this artsy, you would never think about wood burning as an artsy thing, like a crafts, an arts and crafts type of thing, and you've done it, and that makes it so much more accessible. Because when I think of wood burning, I think about getting a literal like almost like a soldering iron, right? And just like slowly, manually, tattoo gunning into wood. some kind of message. But the scorch marker is just like such a it is shocking that it didn't exist.
I know.
You know?
I am a little shocked too, and it was kind of weird going into a space with no real competition to like a direct competition to kind of gauge my progress and put my feelers out there. I am the trendsetter in my category. There is not a single person in the world who knows more about wood burning markers than this guy right here, which is kind
Wow.
of a crazy thing to say, but
That
so
is
much
very
so that I even got ripped off by China. You hear those stories about small businesses getting ripped off by
yeah.
China?
Wow. That's
That was me.
amazing.
It happened to me too.
That's a good problem to have.
That yes. So I want to talk to you. I know that on your Instagram, I can't remember where it was, and I apologize for not being the best interviewer in the world here. But you had I think I have it here. Yeah. You went to a convention of some sort in Salt Lake City. Yeah.
Mm.
Piners Con. This
Pinners
conference.
convention. Yeah, the Pinners convention for Pinterest.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what was that experience like? I know a lot of people who either do art or have a small business often wonder about going to conventions and setting things up. What was that experience like, and what advice do you have?
You should ask the employees that went for me.
Ah.
I'm sorry. I was in
Hey, that's
California. I'm in
how you do it.
California with my, and I have a good chunk of my team
Right.
is in Utah, in Salt Lake City. And so
Mhm.
some of the people that work closely with me that do customer service and content creation, and they've been working for me for a couple of years now. They were like, hey, Pinners convention, we got to do it. I'm like, okay, I'll give you the tools that you need and we'll get you set up for success. And they went, and we didn't have anything to bring home at the end. So that
That's
was kind of
beautiful.
cool.
I
But the
love
neat
it.
thing,
And
yeah, it's
that's
nice to be able to get to talk to people.
Yeah.
yes. And it's super in line with you know, I mean what we talked about previously was we opened with, struggle of sorts, right? Running towards the burning building.
Mhm.
And it's really, really difficult to do what you did in business terms. It's very, very difficult to get a product out of your hands, right? To go
Mm,
from oh, I have this idea,
mm-hmm,
and first you have to make it. That's hard.
mm-hmm.
But usually people don't get past that point where they're making it, and now they become a slave to the task of making the product.
Yeah, they
But
own
you
their job.
managed to get all of those things out of your hands to the
Mm.
point that you got to say the magical words of, well, you'll have to ask my employees. And
It's kind of
I
cool,
think it
man.
does
So you
kind
know
of
you
tie
made it.
back. I think it ties back to being willing to do the hard stuff.
You have to be willing to do the hard stuff,
Yeah.
because every single job that I've ever hired out, I guarantee you that I have dived in and done it to the best of my abilities first. Because there's an interesting way of doing things that I've kind of adopted. And so let's take SEO, for example, right? A foreign
Mhm.
subject to most business owners, but absolutely mandatory if you want to grow and scale in a way where you're not leaving a ton on the table, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so my job was to, right? I see it as I need to understand it. I need to understand the facets of SEO enough to be able to have a conversation with an expert vet their ability, right? You can apply that towards any job detail, for example, bookkeeping or CPAs or personal growth, finances, anything really. But you need to learn enough about it to be able to have a conversation with the expert so that you can help them execute your vision. And so every single thing I've done graphics. I built 3 websites for us before until I could, get to the person who could build the right website for me. So I think that is so crucial that if you're a new business owner or even a small business owner or an experienced business owner, that if you can find somebody that does it 80% as well as you, you can hire it out. You can have them do it. And you can stick to the things that you can stick to your secret sauce, your special stuff that only you can provide. Right now, the only thing that people cannot provide for me, that I cannot find a job to replace for, is being the face of a brand and creating the content specific for that brand.
Mhm.
I don't know anybody else out there who knows my products and what my vision is well enough to be able to execute for a reasonable amount of money.
Right.
And so therefore I hire out all the other stuff, the shipping and the customer service and the wholesaling and the web design and an SEO, and it's all hired out now so that I can focus on what I do best till I can find someone that does 80% as well as me.
That's amazing. That's
Then I'll move
amazing.
on.
I think that's probably a good place to taper off for today. I want to just ask you last, what project wise is top of mind for you, and where can people find you?
You can find me at vanator.com. There's links to find me there. Or you find me on TikTok. I'm sure there's a bunch of links. There'll be a bunch of links in this video when people get
Yep.
to see it. So any of theirs, I have a bio link that usually points people in the right direction because I don't know. Do they want to go see my Scorch Marker stuff, or do they want to figure out who my bookkeeper is? I don't know. Honestly, do they want to look at my portfolio of ETFs? I don't know, but you can if you just find my website or find my bio link. You should be able to. But other than that, I think,
Let me go
yeah,
ahead and put that in the
it's
Twitch chat.
yeah. I also have a bio link, easybiolink.com/vanatorgrowth or /vanator. Yeah, the bio link is probably the most helpful. So to answer your question directly, Josh, there's two things that I'm working on right now that I'm most excited about. And the first thing is building my personal brand out and really going head on into building it out regularly on Twitch and YouTube. I'm really excited to start creating long form content, taking videos and breaking it down in simple form so that people can figure out how to start like LLCs and, figure out their taxes and just simple business stuff like that, so that we can have more business owners, more taxpayers, and a greater GDP. That helps me. That helps everybody, right?
Yep.
And then I get monetized on YouTube and everybody wins. Okay.
That's how you do
Agreed.
it.
Yeah. The second
That'll
thing
work.
is that I'm bringing a product to market right now that I'll be able to talk about really soon because we're just finishing up the prototyping. And this is going to be one of the coolest things you guys have seen. I'll send you guys some when we come up with it.
I'm excited. I'm
It's
excited.
going to be really cool. It's going to be really cool.
Love
I'm
it.
very excited for it. But thanks for having me. You guys have been awesome.
Thank you for
Yeah.
coming on. Lastly, is there anything else that we left out that you want to say?
I just want you guys to be good to future you. That's it. Just think about that for a second and what that really, really means. That if you can get it done today, and future you could look back and be like, nice, they made the bed. Sweet.
It's the best.
Just anything like that. Anything you can do to help out your future self, whether it's starting investing or just getting out of debt or just reading 10 pages of a book before you go to sleep or drinking a bunch of water in the morning when you wake up. I don't care. Just think about being good to your future self. That's it.
Hell yes. I agree. All right, Brandon, what do you got? Where do you want to send people?
Well, as always, I think this week I want to send everyone to my link tree just to go check out my content. I'll put that in the Twitch chat as well. I have Josh's in there as well. Basically, I am looking at redoing a lot of my TikTok content. I'll be doing more generalized content than just stock market videos. I have a bunch in the backlog that are either edited or about to be edited. And then once I'm ready to go, I'm just going to start mass posting again. So I got a lot of that in the works. And then you can find a lot of my upcoming business ventures are going to be posted on that TikTok channel. So just like you were talking about, Evan, one of the most important things for your brand nowadays is being on TikTok and being viral. So you're going to hopefully get to see me try my hand at that here soon. So follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And then what about you, Josh? How can people help you out?
Well, if you want to find me for coaching, find me down below in the links. And besides booking a time for coaching, go find me on Patreon. I'm building it out, revamping it. It's gonna be badass.
I
I'm
believe it.
excited.
So Evan, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this. Brandon, thank you for co-piloting. This was
As
glorious.
always.
It's
I had a
great
blast,
great
you
stream.
guys.
Everybody
Yeah,
have
yeah,
a
good
good night.